Welcome to Sera, a podcast hosted by me, Sera and Lalonde. Join me as I go straight to the sources of my curiosity. Each episode, I get to discover or rediscover everyday educators as we discuss their passions and their projects. Listen in on our conversation and let our words spark imagination and inspiration. You're listening to episode 85 with Jay Dubois, Amplifying Student Voice Through Technology. Welcome, everyone. We are back with another episode of Sera, and I am super pumped because it is a Wednesday evening. I just finished my yoga, and I have Jay Dubois on the podcast. He is an educator from Sir Arthur Currie Public School, and I got to actually meet Jay a couple times. I think we've met in real life, which is always exciting. And Jay has been on other podcasts before, so he is an expert guest. You can catch him on the Chasing Squirrel podcast with Chris Clough, with Ramona Maharg, with Rola, or even with Derek on the Beyond the Staff Room podcast. So, Jay, not to say that I have high expectations of this, but this is your fifth podcast as a guest. How you feeling tonight?
Do you know what? This is always fun. And thanks so much for having me on. I really do appreciate it. And we have crossed paths a few times, and we don't teach anywhere near each other, but it's wonderful when we have these conferences and you kind of cross paths with these Twitter folk, right? And
Yeah,
so it's neat to actually be able to have a long conversation with you.
I know. Where are you located again? Because for me, being from like near Ottawa, anything that's like past, anything just down the 401 is basically GTA. Like anything past Kingston, I'm just like in GTA and I don't know anything. So where are you actually located? Where are you from?
You got to go in through the GTA and out the other side.
Okay.
So we're actually in London, Ontario, and Thames Valley
Ah,
is a pretty big board. We have a lot of rural areas surrounding London. Mm-hmm.
there you go. And I'm learning new things about you all the time. Here we go. This is what the podcast is all about. So tell us a little bit about what your 2019-2020 back to school season, let's say, what is it looking like for you right now?
Do you know what? It's been a really unique back to school season for me. Last year, I was in doing some instructional coaching with the board, so I got to do that for about a year, and then due to some political funding cuts, etc., my coaching position was no longer something that could be funded. So I found myself looking for work back in the classroom again, and to be honest, I was ready to go back because that's where the magic happens. And um, was successful in getting into Sir Arthur Currie. And just to summarize that school, it's so different than schools I've worked at in the past. It's huge. I think we're up to 720 students, I believe. The school's only 2 years old, and I think we're already up to 7 portables.
Oh
Like it's
my.
just a part of London that's truly exploding. But it's a beautiful place. It truly is sort of like a United Nations sort of location. There's so much diversity, and kids come with really neat experiences, and they're excited about learning. They just light up. So I get to work in this new building, modern building, like dimmable fluorescent lights. I think that I'm geeking out about that the most.
No way.
Who even knew, right? And whiteboards on every surface, and flexible seating in every room. So it was kind of my speed. So the fact that I got to end up, moving my contract to that building and working in this space has been truly a joy. So it's been very eye-opening for me. I've been looking forward to it for a number of months, and it's not disappointing.
Okay. Are they still hiring? Do they need French teachers?
Do you know what? If you want to go through the GTA to live in London, Ontario, you never know. It's a great place to be.
It sure sounds like it. I'm smiling ear to ear just having you kind of describe like the students and the environment. I think for me, a huge thing in my classroom is just having a space where students like actually feel the welcoming vibe. I put a whole bunch of like IKEA lamps and Christmas lights and lanterns around, and I never turn my fluorescent lights on because they are not dimmable whatsoever. So that's really neat. Do you find that the space, and this is just something that kind of popped up as you were explaining the physical parts of your classroom, do you find that the space in comparison to maybe other schools or classrooms that you've been in, does this space like help the learning environment in which you and your students are learning in every day?
Do you know what? It absolutely does. And one of my favorite books, I can't even speak to who wrote it, but it's called The Third Teacher.
Ugh.
And I recommend anyone digging into that. And it just talks about how the third teacher is the space. So I remember my last building, I did like you said, I couldn't stand the fluorescent lights. I had one tiny window, so I said, "That's it. We're going full Starbucks." And it was
Mm.
just student groupings, and I had big lamps at each group, and that's the only way we ever lit the classroom. That changed a lot for me, and in terms of giving kids flexible spaces where they're working, they're jumping in huge Rubbermaid bins with pillows and kind of cocooning in with their iPads and doing their reading response, or they're laying out on different carpets, or they're underneath things. They were finding their space to be happy and to find their focus. So once I kind of gave them the control to leave that desk, right, that changed things, and I really enjoyed that. So coming to this school where every single classroom's outfitted with rolling tables, couches, coffee tables, stools of all sizes. Some are wobbly, some are stand-up tables, bar stools for really high desks, and tons of natural light, and of course the dimmable fluorescence and controlling our air conditioning temperature, all those sorts of things. I enter my room every day, and my body literally does a big sigh of
Oh,
happiness.
the
I'm like,
best.
this is a space I want to be for 6.5 hours today. And honestly, if I'm entering my room, 8:15, and I'm feeling that way, 100% that's going to impact how I'm dealing with kids in that space. So to answer your question, long
Mm.
story short, um, a space does it is definitely the third teacher. I really believe that, and the flexible nature of the furniture and having whiteboards on every wall, I get to really jump onto the. I'm a big fan of the Peter Liljedahl work with the vertical non-permanent surfaces,
Okay.
and kids working in groups of three and random groupings all the time, and solving math problems and literacy problems. They're standing on their feet, they're writing on the walls, and it's their thinking that fills the space, not just posters made by me.
Ah.
It really helps them they own that space. And I think that's super important.
Okay, it's so funny. Okay, first of all, you went full Starbucks. And then you had me at the classroom being the third teacher because I just spoke with Tracy Tinley, which I don't know if you've seen her video circulating on Twitter, but she just remodeled her classroom with as a flexible seating space. It got like 55,000 views. It totally blew up. And it was the first time that I heard her also say that the classroom was the third teacher. So this is two people in the time span of a
Mm.
week that have used that term with me, and I love it. So,
I'll tweet a photo of the cover of the text just because I don't have the author's name handy. But it was crowdsourced by just brilliant people, including people like Rafi. So not traditional educators, you'd think, but architects, engineers, musicians, and creators. How would they create a school, and what should be there? And it's truly an international look at how design impacts a learning space, and therefore it does shape what learning looks like.
my favorite thing that you said through all of that was that they're able to like find their space and then find their focus. I think for me as a student, I would have totally loved that. And because finding my focus for me every day means a different space. One day I'm really feeling sitting on the couches. Another day I need to be near a window in the sun. Another day I'm sprawled out on the ground. So even for us, I think like as educators, we need that. It's not only for our students. So it's really powerful.
Oh, it's so true, Sarah. And I'm just thinking, like, when I need to do my deep thinking, not that I'm working for Starbucks or anything, but honestly, like, my family's amazing and supportive, and I have a great little workspace here at home. but I throw myself in my backpack and I go use up 2 hours of free Wi-Fi at
Yeah.
Starbucks and crush a couple Americanos. And I am the most productive in my 2 hours there. I come back and it's like I've lit a fire in myself. There's something about that space, and I've trained myself to be like, it's just the right amount of background noise or something. And then other times I try to work, let's say, in my staff room, and I'll crack open my laptop. I've finished lunch, and I just spin, and I get nothing done.
Mm,
Your body really needs to. It responds to certain stimulus like that,
mhm.
and I have a hard time focusing at home. So I need to find that other place. So think about these kids, right? And saying, thou shalt, and here's your spot, and you're going to be chained to this for five
Ugh.
months. That's a lot to take in,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, yes, yes. Not fun for anyone, but it's funny, like, that you were talking about Starbucks that way because I feel like we're like the male female versions of each other because I'm the exact same way. A good productive Starbucks time, either alone or with somebody else, is just like totally transformational. And like you said, lights that fire and you
Yeah,
just crazy, crazy, crazy. Actually,
yeah,
a couple
agreed.
days ago, I was playing on YouTube just like 3 hours of Starbucks music just to make me feel like I was, close to. I don't have a Starbucks near me right now, so I
Oh,
can't access it quickly. It's like
uh,
45 minutes in the other direction, so not always evident, but we're
well,
making it work.
do you know what? If they could package their smell as an essential oil,
Yes.
I think that's, you know what I mean. If I could just make my classroom smell
Oh
like
my
that,
gosh.
maybe it's a scent based learning environment thing. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but it's magic.
Oh,
Isn't
okay.
it?
Just to one more question about the flexible learning because I find it really interesting that I just had an hour and 6 minute conversation with Tracy solely about this topic, but I just want to hear your perspective about something that I've been wondering with flexible seating. I am 100% in it. I believe in it. I want to be able to build my classroom throughout the years with different like resources and physical, like tables and chairs and cushions and stuff that I'm able to acquire throughout the years. But more, when you talk about having students come into a classroom where they weren't necessarily in a flexible seating classroom the year before, and now you are starting, you know, 2019, 2020 with them, and you don't have desks and rows, how do you manage or how do you start the year off on a good foot and explain to them how the system not the system but how your class is going to work, how the space works for them so that it's not World War III chaos everywhere.
Do you know what I remember turning, uh, putting my desks to the sides of the room, and putting those lamps, and it left a lot of open space in the middle of my room. I painted one wall green. I wanted that studio feeling right in my space. So we're going to be creators, and this isn't going to look like a typical classroom. Um, I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but I think because I typically I do a lot of teaching grade 3, grade 4. There's something about that age group where you're still a bit of a magician
Mm,
to those kids, right? You're still a little bit of a unicorn in a lot of ways. So for them to come into a space where I'm like, oh, well, I don't really care where you sit as long as these expectations are met when you're done. Go crush it, buddy,
yeah.
right? That's what you want to do, or that's the tool you want to use. So, like, we do a lot of, there's a lot of modeling in the classroom, and I want to say crowdsourcing, and I use that word too much, um, about how to do things. So, I very much I have a target up on my wall now. I had a target up on my wall back then, and um, choices that we think about into whether or not it's apps, it's tech, it's locations, it's approaches. We have all these ideas as like little stickies around this target, and kids will all kind of pitch a task, and kids will say, "Well, I might use this," and three other hands will go up and say, "Oh, that works for me too. I kind of would prefer to do a video instead of writing." And
Mm.
then other kids are like,
Is that like Padlet versus, I don't know
"Oh,
here. I'm looking at the picture right now. Like GarageBand, Google Forms. Is that what you're talking about? That image that you have up on your Twitter?
yeah, yeah." So we
Cool.
basically, I, I,
I
I
was
want
wondering how that
to,
worked.
yeah. So like the fall right now, I'm just introducing students to how to use every app that's going to be a productivity or creativity app on the iPad. and same through, the Google apps and the Chromebooks. So we'll learn them together. I call it kind of like developing that digital tool belt. So by about Christmas, I start opening up tasks completely wide, saying, here's the task, here's the single point rubric that says you're going to show me this, this, and this. Let's talk about how you're going to share your thinking. And again, they'll look at the target, and some kids will be like, Mr. D, I want to do this in Scratch. And I'll kind of look at them and scratch my head and say, wow, this is a writing task, and this kid wants to choose Scratch. All right, I'm going to give you a chance. And then you go back an hour
Mm.
later, and he's coded a story with speech bubbles. I don't even know how to do it. And he did it in Scratch, right? And thinking, I need to give these kids like how that's magic. And then other kids will kind of say, well, I see Mr. D use Keynote or Pick Collage a lot, and that's my safe app, but they're still able to own it and give me what they need in something that they thought they directed that choice. So I never say no to an approach. And some kids through this process learn that, paper pencil is still my jam. And I'm like, great. The fact that you
Mm.
recognize that and you're saying no to the shiny iPad factor means you're really tuning into yourself as a learner. And I'm like, high five for that, right? So you'll get these kids that are just, workbook kids, and they want writer's notebooks and sharp pencils. And
Mhm.
it's neat. Or sometimes we'll say, is this a collaborative grouping task, or is this a solo task? And we'll have the kids talk about what works for certain things. And as part of that, we'll talk about where we can work in the classroom. So this is kind of how I kind of, I guess, scaffold introducing what that flexible seating looks like. I have
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
two learning pods. I have two learning pods, these big bins. I have 4 pillows. I have 5 pod areas. I'm going to allow 4 kids to have space with XYZ in the hallway. This is what we have as options. Who wants to tell me or make a pitch as to what they want and why they need that space? Oh, I need the green screen space because I'm going to use, this app to show this and put myself in my book and tell the character this. I'm like, sounds like you have a plan. Off you go. And we'll kind of learn through each other how those different spaces are productive spaces. So when kids go to work and I can walk around, I'm like, are you on task? Show me what you're working on. How are you reflecting on your rubric right now? Is this tool working for you? Okay, do we need a switch? How can I help you with that? And kids eventually get very good at choosing places and tools that fit their learning style. And they tend to have such a powerful ownership of that and say, I'm a movie making kid because I talk better than I write. And other kids are like, I don't like the sound of my voice, but on this app, I can make like pro looking posters that look like they're peeled right out of, the Cineplex Odeon. I'm like,
Mm.
great. So that's your way. So they learn how to attack an audience, and everything they do is, we call it, is being published for an audience. Everything we make, whether it's a math a math tool, we're going to pitch it as a tutorial for teaching the subject to a different class. If it's a literacy piece, it better look like something from the real world, because otherwise, what are we doing with our time together, right? So they really get good at trying to make their work look like something their mom and dad might do or bring home, or they see coming in their mailbox or through their laptop. Um, and it's all kind of slowly scaffolding that experience. So now I walk into this new school where I have grade 3 and 4 kids, but they've already had 2 full years of flexible seating. So I haven't
Mm.
had to scaffold as much. And it's a beautiful thing. Like, I am not solving any arguments in terms of kids, quote unquote, like fighting for the 2 bar stools, or I want a desk near the window, or that's just not happening, because they know that when they come in after the next recess, it's a reset button and everyone's in a different spot again. Um, so it's neat, but I know it was not that easy for that staff in year 1. I certainly know that
Mm.
was not the case, and I know certainly as kids age, I feel that students start to figure themselves out and might want that safe space where they own that desk and they have at least that one spot in the classroom that belongs to them. So the idea of asking them to be somewhere random all the time might start to not sit well with some people, right? So I agree with you. I would have loved the opportunity to choose my space as a kid, as a learner,
Mhm.
right? But there's a lot who don't want to take that risk, maybe aren't super collaborative, and that's very open ended for them. So I think it's a different type of scaffolding depending on your audience.
What I really what stuck with me in that explanation is that there's almost like a purpose for each spot or close, right? And I never like I know that it's happening, but I'm not in the elementary school world. I'm just, working with grade 9s and 10s right now, but hearing your students able to already reflect on their well, not only on their strengths and weaknesses, but on what you're asking them to show in their learning, what their strengths are and how they want to create that final product. Like my mind is blown.
It,
This is
and
yeah.
it works. It really it sounds too wide open, and there's I do a lot of different sessions. I'm very fortunate and be able to go to conferences and speak and show all these kind of neat tech things. And you have some teachers who are just so overwhelmed by me, and I'm not an overwhelming person, but I guess like this is my 15th year, and once you get to know the curriculum deeply, and you've
Yeah.
made your mistakes for your like I felt like a new teacher for 8 years. I feel. And then something just clicked one day, and I said, "Be true to me. Be true. Like I have my own children now. What do I wish their school day looked like, and what can I do better in my own classroom to make this a really cool place where kids want to be?" Um, and once I changed that mindset myself and gave kids the opportunity and let go of that control, it's a big step to let go of that control. But once I did, it really changed how I view teaching and how much I enjoy this career now. Um, because I'm not just covering curriculum and checking things off. I'm giving kids opportunities to be directors, photographers, writers, pitch makers. They're doing elevator pitches. We're doing design thinking. We're creating engineering firms. We're doing all these sorts of things using website. And they are all in. They're totally buying in. And then the proof in the pudding is when I'll have every once in a while I'll have like a sharing night, and I'll open up the classroom
Mm.
for an hour after school. The folks drop by, and the kids open up their website portfolios, and they're showing off their the different projects they've done. And you just see the parents looking at their kids saying, "How did you do that? How did you do that 360-degree photograph with the built-in narration of a tour through a forest from your like your forest day field trip?" Like, and I'm like, "Don't share your secrets, right?" Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's
yeah.
so neat to see those kids light up and say, "Mom, look at what I made." And I don't remember ever going home to my parents saying, "Wow, look at my duotang. It's so full and I got check marks on every
Yes.
page." Right? So, but I need to be honest and say I wouldn't have been ready to do what I'm doing in my first, second, maybe even fifth year of teaching. So to the young teachers out there who are trying to take some risks, and like, good on them, because it's not easy. It is not easy. You need to really trust yourself, trust that you know the curriculum, and then I start thinking about my audience, and I have clients in my room, and I need to get them to a certain place. But I also know that their parents are clients of our education experience too. And I want them to go, "Wow, you did what today?" Like, that's what I want those parents to say. And
Mhm.
then it's less of a conversation about, oh, so and so's printing, or so and so's, you know, they're still missing periods in all their sentences. Well, that's something we're working on. But look at what your kid just made. Like he pitched and directed a commercial selling this environmental, like pitch. And he's doing
Yeah.
PSAs, and he's ready to be on YouTube, right? And that's a viable
Mhm.
career option now. So it
Wow.
was just wild, and I'm very spoiled. Like, I had the chance to go to Apple Distinguished Educator Institute this past summer. So there were 400 teachers from Brazil, Mexico, U.S., and Canada, and you have to apply to get in. So I was fortunate to get in. And I was part of Team Canada, and flew down to Washington and spent 3.5 days with Apple. Um, and one of the things that really stuck with me there, Apple calls themselves the crazy idea people. And
Mm.
I left going, do you know what? That's me. That's me. Like, I will be inspired by something I'll see tonight on Netflix, scrap the first half of my day plan for tomorrow, and go all in with kids exploring some new product
Mm.
that they can make because I saw something on YouTube or on Netflix that blew me away on font, like a let's say, I watched a documentary on font of all things, and it's
Yep.
a series
Hey.
called Abstract. If you haven't seen it, wow.
Okay.
And So we blew up like our word work for the rest of the week using font to highlight different elements of words, but it looked like word art. And then we can make that talk. We can make that a video. Like it's just talking about sharing and marketing what you're doing and saying your ideas matter. It might just be some descriptive sentences. It might just be something we're doing in math or social studies. But let's pretend it's more. And how can you sell this idea? And while you're doing that, if you can reteach through some way, that's truly the mastery of a concept. Um, so going to the Apple piece was
Yeah.
that 3.5 days there was just, my mind was
Mm.
so jam packed, and such inspiring people doing crazy things. And I don't know, me, like I try to say do one scary thing a year, and I don't know why I keep signing up for things that make my heart palpitate. And I applied to be a showcase speaker. And what that is they'll take 20 speakers out of the 400, and you get 3 minutes to share your story on the big stage in the ballroom.
What?
And it's a big stage and a huge screen, and each side of the screen has a lectern, or like a podium, and there's a spotlight trained on each podium. And and one you have 3 minutes, and once it hits 3 minutes, it counts down with a huge countdown clock. And when it hits 3 minutes, your light goes off and they cut your mic, and the next one starts up on the other side of the stage. So it goes
Oh
back and
my.
forth like this. So I got in as a rookie, as a first timer, and there's all these alumni doing it as well. And they kept talking about it. I was doing it on day 3, and they kept talking about it. It's like, oh my gosh, you must be so excited. You're doing this talk. I'm thinking, what have I signed myself up for? Like, I'm just sharing, I did weekly field trips a couple years ago using iPads and documenting our Canada 150 era citizens in our community. And I wanted to talk about the importance of learning outside and just documenting and taking it and uncovering curriculum organically. And that was my talk for 3 minutes. And then they gave me a mentor for my slides. And I'm like, oh man. So I had to do all these mentor programs on how to fix my Keynote animations, which I've never even used Keynote before. I'm like, they're going to kick me out of this program if they find out. So I'm like, here I am signing up for this thing, trying to make my Keynote great. They're talking about doing animated line designs. I'm like, pardon up. Can you go back a few minutes?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm lost already. So finally, I get to the point where it's finished, and then I meet the people I'm speaking with, and they're the people on the Apple education websites, like they're famous faces. They're some of the speakers I was speaking with, and the guy before me has 24 Emmys he's won because he invented it's called iPhoneography, and he runs a program at Michigan State University where he teaches everyone film directing completely through iPhones. He's won 24 Emmys. So I'm
Did you
thinking,
just curl up in a ball and
what am I
hide or what?
the worst? And we actually had to rehearse the night before because Apple, everything is just as it looks. It's polished. It is timely. It's serious. And so we had to do a rehearsal, and I was shaking so bad waiting for my time. And what they'd said was, when the person on the opposite side of the stage is at 1 minute left, you go up your stairs in the
Oh,
dark,
no.
get behind your
I'm
podium,
nervous.
get the clicker in your hand, and you're in darkness. And then when you're standing up on the stage, there's 2 huge monitors on the floor. So there's not like usually your laptop is up with you. It's way down, and there's a huge slide showing the current slide, and then has your notes on the other piece.
Okay.
Um, and then there's an overall countdown clock. So the person ends, and all of a sudden the spotlight goes on. You can't see anyone in the audience, and they say, take a breath. And as soon as you start speaking, your 3 minutes starts counting down. And I did the rehearsal, and I didn't get to my last slide in time. And I looked at the wrong spot, and it's wrong. I don't even know. So my rehearsal didn't go perfectly as planned. So of course I didn't sleep the night before.
Oh,
But the morning of, it went gangbusters. It went like just as I'd practiced, and it felt really
yeah, yeah,
good.
yeah.
But when you're up there, and I just think about all these big speakers that are always in spotlights and have massive stages, you don't get that back and forth audience response. Like usually people nod and say, "Yeah, I get
Okay.
it." You don't have that at all. So
Right.
you're hoping your jokes are hitting, and you have no sense. You have no sense of that. Um,
You're just doing your best. Yeah,
you're
yeah, yeah, yeah,
doing your
yeah.
best, and your 3 minutes is up, and everyone starts clapping, and the light goes off. You walk down to the dark and sit down, and your heart attack is over, right? Um, and I'm just thinking the way, and at the back, Apple had all these translators. live translating my notes for the Brazilians and Mexicans into Spanish. Like, it was just such a polished event. I couldn't even understand what was going on.
My,
It was
you
wild.
must have felt really important.
Unfortunately, so like they actually gave us tables at lunch so people could come and sit with you and ask you questions. And, like, it was just awkward.
What?
It was just awkward in a sense. And after the day was done, it's like, oh, that was another dude who did one of those talks. Great job. Um, but that was that one thing scary. And I'm thinking, okay, not every kid's ready to do a big production presentation, but what if they can pre-record their presentation through Apple Clips, and they can develop their own soundtrack using GarageBand, and instead they want to make a website instead of doing a talk. Who am I to say that that's not a better choice for them? So if kids can say, yo, Mr. D, that experience is cool, but that's not for me. But I do like this instead, and I'm going to totally hit all these expectations and blow you away. My answer is always like, awesome. I can't wait to see what you do.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry, I
Wow.
talk a lot.
Where do I go from this? No, I am like, I'm almost so captivated. I just want to let you just talk for the rest of the podcast. Like, tell me all the other things that you do in your life on your day to day. Like, it's just so incredible to hear.
You know what?
I think it's mostly because, like, we talked about this before the podcast, before like I press record. As a second year teacher, I just feel like I'm treading water just to stay above where I need to be, to not like die in the deep water of things to do and worries and insecurities and this and that. So when I find someone, which are all the guests on my podcast, who have it together, I want to say, right? Like, you understand, you were just talking about like just the power of having that 15 years of teaching underneath your belt, knowing your curriculum and knowing tech tools. I think that that is just a beautiful, like, harmony of like things that allow you to strive and that allow your students, like, they have no idea how lucky they are. And for me, I consider myself lucky because I have like the tech tools under my belt. Like, I was lucky enough to do a little bit of self-directed PD and develop my knowledge on those, and curriculum I'm learning still as I, get thrown different classes here and there. But what kind of tips would you give to any newer teachers listening who are hearing your story and are just thinking like, how can I do 5% of what Jay is doing in his classroom? Like,
Um, do you know what? Like, I think it's super important. I've had like really amazing opportunities to do things. I'm not going to lie to you though. I go to work every day and think someone's going to find out that I'm not a good teacher sometime soon. I think a lot
mm,
of teachers
imposter syndrome.
struggle with that because it's maybe not even imposter syndrome. I think just the challenge, the job is so big, and you might be a curriculum master, but that doesn't mean that you're a great teacher necessarily, or classroom management is easy for you, or you have a really great relationship with your kids, but maybe you need to do some more work on really setting up some standards so kids are measuring their own growth. Like, there's always something to get better at,
Hmm.
and I know that, but at the same time, the maturity, that like the experience doing it, I know that if something goes kaput and I try to have my kids take a risk and it doesn't go as planned, at the end of the day, we've cut the cord and we start fresh the next day. Like, we have 194 days with these kids. It's okay to take some risks on some days, and if it gets you off your 3-week plan and you're off by a day, take a breath. Like, that's
Okay.
okay. It's
Yeah.
totally okay. And don't get stuck on your long range plans. You're going to get there, and maybe because you're detouring a little bit for a few days here, that might have some meaning to it and might not be absolutely clear right now, but diving in deep into something now is going to pay off in another way another time. And just like a quick example of that today,
Hmm.
we are doing Stream of Dreams, and it's where every kid in the school gets to paint a fish, and it goes on the fence, and it's a public service announcement for all people that walk by the fence to remember that anything going down a storm drain affects our fish and affects our habitats. So we did that today, and the kids had such a blast painting their fish. Then I'm like, do you know what? The last period of the day is supposed to be social studies. I'm going to teach them how to use Apple Clips. I'm going to give them a 15-minute quick movie school on how to use this. And instead, kids are going to make commercials that they're going to be able to share with their parents. And we talked about the importance of choosing the right soundtrack and how emotion impacts your audience. And here's ways to do this, this, and this. Grab your partner and go. And
Wow.
just to say play and make mistakes, they're running up to you, showing what they're making. Mr. D, what do you think about this? And I found this
Mhm.
image and I put this keynote on. What do you think about this hashtag idea? And here's the right soundtrack. Can we please have more time? Like, that's music to my ears, right?
Yeah.
So went off the daybook, gave them an opportunity to create. It's still literacy, it's still media. But guess what? They're getting better at a tool that they're going to be able to come back to when it's heavy duty time and it's February and we're really trying to finish up like a tricky literacy piece. They're going to be able to grab that clips tool and make a movie about their learning and share it in a way that A, is fun for them, B, really gives me insight into what they're talking about, and C, like, their parents are going to be impressed, right? Their parents are going to be like, wow, this is what my kid's doing. So take
Mhm.
that risk, take the time. Don't worry if you're off your daybook for a few days. Something else to think about too. Uh, a lot of people will say, "Oh my gosh, I wish I could learn more here. I wish your 1 hour session was longer. I could spend a whole, that kind of stuff." Because I talk fast and share a lot of ideas, and I'm like, I hope 3 stuck with you. Give it a try. You can't go wrong. Let your students take the lead. You're going to find those kids that are sometimes, like, harder to manage. Become your tech leaders, right? Like, it's the most unsuspecting kids that can
You're so
green
right.
screen with the best of them, and then they're
Mm.
the leader in the classroom all of a sudden, and you're going, golden, right? Like, that's just so great. I wish teachers kind of had the guts sometimes to say, can I watch you teach for 40 minutes tomorrow during my prep? And I would be the type of teacher saying, oh my goodness, what on earth would you want to see? Why would you want to watch me? Right? That's kind of like your first response. But if they actually said, I know you use this. I would just love to see it in action because I'm just nervous about it. And I don't want you to do anything special. I just want to watch what the kids do. And if you could approach some, more experienced teachers that way, whether it's a math lesson you want to watch or,
Yeah.
hey, I hear you're using this strategy. Can I give it a go? There's a lot of vulnerability with that though, right? At both ends to
Yeah.
say, hey, I need to learn. That's not easy to do because we're all trying to look like we are keeping it cool. We all have it under control, even though underneath a lot of us are going, "Oh my goodness, I thought I was ready for
Mm.
today. What's going on?" Like, there's a lot of, you know what I mean. So being honest, and for experienced teachers as well, to say, I make mistakes every day. I'm still nervous when I go to work sometimes. I'm trying something today and I'm not sure how it's going to go. Modeling that, and I wish I had more of that when I was a new teacher because everyone seemed to have it put together, and I
Well, yeah,
couldn't
I was just gonna say,
figure out
I think
their special
that
sauce was
philosophy is
hidden.
amazing. Mhm.
Like, show me your special sauce, and just say, do you know what? It's not so special, but I'm really proud of this and this, or watch what my kids did with this. This really surprised me, and it changes the conversation a little bit.
My goodness. Okay, Jay, what I wanna do right now is play a little game. I'm gonna let you choose the game that we're gonna play. Something I'm trying this season. It's new. Um, and then after our quick little segment, I want to just dive in to your Google Innovator project because that was obviously one of the reasons why I want to have you on the podcast here to chat about it and to kind of hopefully expand the horizons of people who get to know about what you're doing. So, for the game, I'm going
Amazing.
to give you the choice. Either we can play finish this sentence or overrated or underrated. So one or the other. Which one would you like to play?
Ooh, I don't know. Overrated, underrated sounds a bit more dangerous, so let's do that one.
Okay. So I have a list here. We're going to go with like 5 things. And this is like an opinion piece that we're going to like chat about. Like I have my opinion
Okay.
and you have yours, and we'll see if we agree on each one. So, considering that we've already established that we have a lot in common, I feel like this game should go really well. Okay. So the first one we're gonna start with, this is gonna be make it or break it though. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
So overrated or underrated? Coffee.
Underrated. Still, even though I think most people are onto it, you can't talk about it enough.
Okay, 100% also on the train of underrated. I was walking in the hallways today. This is just like a super side note. And one of my students was like, Madame, you're not in high heels, you're not wearing your glasses, and you don't have a coffee in your hands. What is wrong with you today? I was having a rough morning.
Fantastic.
And yeah, they all know. Last year when I was finishing my year with them, I wasn't sure if I was coming back. And I just told them that, if I wasn't back in their school, they could find me at the coffee shop. They could come say hi. I would basically live there if I wasn't in school. So we can put a little ding. We
For
got
sure.
coffee checked.
Woohoo!
Okay.
Nice.
Um, let's do another one. Smart boards, overrated or underrated?
Overrated.
Okay.
And I am in a room and I was given the option to maybe have one added, and I said no, thank you. And this is after having one in my classroom for about 12 years. Um, but I'm on the overrated train, and teachers of different age groups would have some different opinions about that.
Okay. So why did you choose to have no smartboard?
To me, uh, it's an expensive piece of technology, and it was supposed to engage students to come up and interact with the lesson. But at the end of the day, it's one kid at a time, maybe interacting with the lesson. And it became like a behavior management thing when I was using it earlier in my career. I'd be like, oh, who's the kid who's sitting the nicest? Oh, you get to come up and move the box over. You're right. That word's correct.
Mm,
Um, like,
okay.
I don't know if a tool should be a behavior management piece. It also means I heard one of those talks at the Apple conference that I did. The very first guy that went blew me away, and he had a picture of himself when he first got a smartboard, and he had a picture of the ground, and there's a scuff mark. It was 6 feet wide, and it went from one end of the smartboard to the other. He said that smartboard was like a handcuff to the front of the room.
Hmm,
And once he took that smartboard out and defronted the room,
mm.
everything changed. So he's like, that
Wow.
smartboard was probably one of the worst things he did. Big statement, right?
Yeah. It's funny because I'm just thinking about this, and this was not planned whatsoever. I used my smartboard for the first time today in 2 years. Like, I actually put a picture on the smart notebook
Right.
and I wrote on it because we were in science learning about how planes, um, fly essentially and, like, the different forces, and so I had the same picture that I had printed out for them, and I was, like, kind of showing the designs that I wanted them to do on their paper, and I didn't wanna just draw any like, airplane on the board, but at the same time, I've used my smart board as a projector screen essentially for the past 2 years without thinking anything of it, but I also I
100%.
yeah, I fell in this, like, in between generations where I was at the end of my high school when smart boards, like, started being integrated in my high school, and then in teachers college, like, nobody gives you any kind of workshop on how to use them to their full potential, right? Like, it's kind of over those days, so I have a smart board. Do I know how to use it? Absolutely not. Could I use it way more effectively? Yes. But could I do what I am doing by just projecting on a whiteboard and putting that image and then writing, with my dry erase, the same thing as I did today on my smart board? Absolutely. So I am also on the
Right.
overrated train. Okay,
And yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
next one, Twitter. Overrated or underrated, Jay?
Oh, I change my mind on that every day. Um, I'm going to say it. I think it depends where you are in your Twitter life. I only
Okay.
joined Twitter in about 2016. So I was late to the game, and it kind of blew my mind, and really changed a lot for me. And I got really excited because I was seeing things that I was not seeing in the silo of the building or my board where I was working. And I'm like, people are doing this and sharing this. Wow! And like, I'm doing that tomorrow, right? So it was PD in my pocket, and I told everyone about it. And that was great. And now, kind of 3 years in, I share a lot because I believe in, hey, students did something cool. Maybe your students might want to try this. If this sees you, inspires you, worth it. It only took me 30 seconds to tweet, worth it, because
Mhm.
I've taken a lot of ideas from other teachers. So it's kind of like my paying it forward. And I know people like, oh, looks like bragging when I post something. I'm like, I get that. I get that. All social media only seems to focus on the good stuff. But if you're truly tweeting about things that kids did, I don't think you can go wrong.
Mhm.
Um, and so I do tweet a lot of that, but I find now when I go on Twitter as a user, I'm not getting the same experience I did at first. I'm noticing more quotes being re-forwarded 1,000 times.
Right.
Um, it's less inspiring because I'm not seeing as many teachers in the trenches saying, "Kids, we're really excited about this. Check it out."
Hmm.
So unfortunately, I'm out of love with it a little bit, but then every time I fall out of love with it, I post something and I have a teacher message me and say, "I'm doing this tomorrow," or "Check out what my kids did," and I'm like,
Yeah.
worth it, right?
I think it
Because
comes
how
in
else would I have
seasons.
reached
Mhm.
anyone?
Mhm.
Yes, 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 yes.
I
So
definitely
what's your official word though?
well,
Overrated, underrated?
no, I have to say that it's still I'm, like, somewhere in the middle. I don't think it is overrated, I don't think it is underrated, but I would have to say underrated because I definitely don't think it's overrated. That was really awfully explained.
I
You can
get it.
tell it's
I
getting
get it.
late. But, yeah, I think it depends what you're looking to get out of it, exactly like you said, and if you're willing to put into it. Like, for me, it's that connection piece that I still kind of live for, reminding me that I'm not like alone in my silo every day, or that I'm not just not, I don't want to say the word stuck, but like that I'm not only able to connect with teachers in my school. Like it just allows me to have those connections, like speaking with you, like speaking with, educators in the US or, across the globe. It
Hmm.
helps that connection piece. Like we all just have those same passions of, having our students succeed in common, and if I can connect with anyone who has that same passion as me, like I win. So that's why I can't say that it's overrated.
Yeah,
I don't know.
right. And I've a buddy here from Thames Valley, and he's kind of been here, there, and everywhere. Derek Tangretti, and I was having a conversation with him, and he's like, "What we need to do for Twitter to truly make it authentic and sharing, he's like, we need to take the like button off.
Mm,
We need people to share because they know sharing is the right thing to do, and then we become less trained to look for those notifications and those hearts. That
yeah.
kind of takes. So there's sometimes you tweet something, you're like, why did that only get 3 hearts? Was it the time of day? That's a silly conversation to have with yourself, but I think we all fall into that
Yes,
because when you have
sir.
a big tweet and you get lots of hearts, boy, does that kind of get your endorphins going. So
Yeah.
if we could take out the hearts piece, people with very few followers would feel just as successful as those with 3,000 followers or whatever. And if people are sharing, it's because they're like, someone somewhere might benefit. I'll never know, but I'm doing this altruistically.
Mhm.
I think that would, so he said that, and it kind of like, you're brilliant, man. That would really change how I think Twitter's used, to be quite
Yeah,
honest.
it changes the why, it changes the purpose in that tweet, right? Are you getting it for the likes to, have this beautiful portfolio on your Twitter feed to say, look at all the cool things that I do in my classroom, not look at all the ways my students, or I'm putting my students in the spotlight, the way that they're learning, the way that they're showing they're learning, the risk that they're taking, right? Where is the spotlight going to and what you're trying to get out of it?
Yeah, big time.
Cool. So I think we're just gonna end it there. We are 3 for 3. Jay Dubois
Woohoo!
and Sera Lalonde, we got a perfect score. Um, let's do like elevator pitch. You need to explain, or I'm kindly asking
Oh
you
boy.
to explain your Google Innovator project.
Yeah, well, oddly enough, when I got to go to Innovator Academy, it was in Venice Beach last summer in LA, and developing an elevator pitch for your project was one of the things we
No
had to do.
way.
So it was 3 days of design thinking around supposed to be a transformation project for education. Um, like full disclosure, mine has not been a transformational project for education yet, but basically what it is, it's called crowdsourcing promising practice, and it's a website, it's a YouTube channel, it's a Twitter group, it's a spot for highlighting cool things that teachers are doing
Yeah.
in classrooms using text. So um, there's a learn link, and you can go to that and search, kind of like by tool, by subject, by grouping, and it's going to bring you to the YouTube page and link you to a video that's either created with me in tandem with this teacher, kind of walking through and screen sharing how they used maps to do life mapping, or how they used forms to do some quick assessment ideas, or using Google Drawings to develop interactive, hyperlinked coats of arms, things like that. Just fun ideas that you can go and watch this 10-minute tutorial, maybe have a neat idea in your pocket for the next 5 days. So I wanted it to be authentic and created by teachers, and not just those who are already delivering workshops and already going and doing the conferences, and already those who have a ton of followers. I wanted to recognize that every teacher in every room has something really magic that they do. And if we could just find a way to capture that and find a spot to house those little things, A, we're going to have a really great space to go and do some learning. But B, the bigger idea here is that we're developing capacity. We're getting rid of imposter syndrome. We're having this, it's not shiny and perfect. It's just you're screen recording and talking about something. All the warts are on it. We put it up as is. It's the idea that matters, not the delivery and how fancy it is. And there's also like a nomination piece to it. So let's say I was to ask for you to create a cool video on podcasting. It'd go up on my site, and in the mail from me, you'd be getting some swag, a letter, and it says, "Congratulations. Your job now is to tap one new teacher or like a different teacher on the shoulder and say, you're doing something cool. I'm not nominating you." So there's a nomination form, and I'd get that, and I'd reach out to that teacher and say, "Hey, here you're doing something super cool. Can I help you make a really simple, no frills tutorial? Because we think this is a great idea and others should be able to learn from it." So that's the pitch, and that's where the crowdsourcing promising practices piece comes
Mm-hmm.
in. To be quite honest, what I'm learning, Sarah, is that those who are being reached out to they're really struggling with thinking that they have something worth
Yeah.
sharing. Um, and I knew that was a problem, but I thought having the supports around that and having people nominating and having the Turning Up Teachers world there on Twitter and the followers, and you've already seen the other videos, and there's lots of other things to look at to kind of say, oh, I can do that too. It's just not happening. Or teachers are saying, I want to do this, but every time we follow up, it's like they're busy. And that's the life of a teacher too. I need to be honest. Like, I have kids and we're all doing too many things. But it's growing extremely slowly. I'm still very proud of it. And the videos that are on the YouTube channel, it's amazing learning. But it was still created by those who were already confident enough to give it a go.
Right.
And I'm not really hitting my target audience, to be quite honest.
So do you think, is it a problem with like the risk taking or the confidence in putting yourself out there? I guess that's what taking is, but like what is the
Yeah,
source of the issue there? I'm trying to
yeah, like,
understand.
and that was my big question, because to get into the Google Innovator program, your 2 minute, I guess it's a 3 minute video. Um, it's a pitch asking a tough question, and really they judge your submission based on the type of question you're asking. And that was mine. I'm like, does PD work for most teachers? The way current PD models typically happen in boards, you sign up, it's either required sit and get, or it's something offered on weekends only, which doesn't work for a lot of families and busy people. Is there a balance? Is what about online learning? Are we tapping into that as an option for people who prefer to learn that way? Like, we differentiate for kids, but is
Yeah,
PD being differentiated? So I was thinking, well, this is one way, like, by teachers for teachers, and it's just 10 minutes at a time, and choose to use it or not, right?
basically.
So I thought, maybe this is my pitch, but I want to also, if you're being tapped on the shoulder and being told, hey, this is cool, I just nominated you for this, can I show you how easy this is? Jay's going to walk you through it, and through Google Hangout and all these sorts of things. And a lot of teachers are like, whoa, Google Hangout, what the heck is that? No.
Okay.
YouTube, no.
Mm.
Um, so that it is much more of a barrier than I thought, even though I thought the scaffolding around it was pretty strong. Um, I think it's just too much of a leap, to be quite honest.
So what are your next steps?
part of me is I'm someone that needs to chew on something for a bit. So like
Okay.
this is my baby, and it's kind of been sitting there, and I haven't put a tutorial on in about 3 months or so. And
And don't you
um,
have mentors with the innovator projects that you check in with and stuff, or how does that work?
we have, and I had a mentor, like you probably know him, Roland Chidiak,
Yeah.
and he's from the Waterloo board.
Oh,
He's like
Roland
such a
Road.
friendly, nice guy.
Yep.
And we were just kind of talking about it, and I'm like, well, would this tool work better for teachers and faculties of education? Would this be something that would be interesting for them? But then they'd be maybe a good audience for the learning piece, but they're not going to be necessarily the ones ready to contribute to it yet, because
For
I
sure.
mean, when you're learning, again, that imposter syndrome's massive.
Mhm.
Um, so I still need to find experienced teachers willing to go there and do that. Um, and a lot of people just kind of scratch their head and look at me and they're like, "You want me to do what?" Yeah. And they try to be nice about it, but you can tell it's never going to happen.
Yeah. Or
Oh,
you're just
right.
like me and you
So
start
my
a
big
podcast in your, first year of teachers college because 'cause you're just that curious. If they can't do a
I
Google
love it.
Hangout, then I don't think there's gonna be a podcast, so I can understand that resistance.
Right.
Yeah.
So you know what? Like I gave it a go, and it's still up there live, ready to go. Lots of great learning. And at the end of the day, do you know what? We had, over like a thousand hits on YouTube. Like that's still a lot of people checking things out.
Mhm.
So I'm not completely disheartened by the whole thing. I did know at the time that I was asking a big question, and my what if was truly a huge piece. And I think it's above my pay grade at this point to be able to put my finger on why this is what it is. It's just, it's a big question. So I gave my little kick at the can with that. So it's
There you
currently
go,
in limbo,
yeah.
and I need to think maybe it tweaks and changes, maybe it slowly fades out, or maybe I just get a spark when I see something on Netflix tonight, right?
'Kay,
And
I love
that
it.
seems that seems to be how I roll.
Well, you can keep us updated with that. Do you want to? I think this is a good segue to kind of give our listeners, our folks listening to the podcast right now, how they can reach you if what you're just talking about did spark their interest. How can they go find that website that you're talking about? If they want to go watch some of the videos that are already there, if they're curious about that, what are the best ways to reach you?
The best ways to reach me, do you know what? If I send everyone to my Twitter account, if I'm assuming a lot of listeners are probably Twitter users, I do link to my project with Google, and it'll bring you to the Twitter account for the Crowdsourcing Promising Practices project, and um, it will kind of get that conversation started, but message me through Twitter if you can.
Mhm.
And on there's also like my blog and things like that where I've talked a bit about my process. But really, if you just want to give an idea, go check out the YouTube channel and say, hey, I can do one of those too. On the Crowdsourcing Promising Practices website, there's actually a tab called Looking For, and it's a huge collection of ideas, and people are probably doing many of these things. I'm just looking for someone to say, hey, I'm willing to open up my computer window, record it, talk about how I use it,
Yeah.
and I can get it up on YouTube for them. So that's probably the best way to do it. I'm definitely on Twitter every
Yeah,
day.
yeah. Who isn't? It is totally underrated. We
Right.
decided that already. Amazing. Well, Jay, I just want to thank you for taking the time on your Wednesday evening here in September to speak with me. I know as educators, our time and energy is like our most valuable resources. So I want to remind our listeners that in this big, beautiful world of education, we give what we can, we do what we can, and for the rest, que sera, sera. Que Sera Sera is a proud member of the Voice Ed Radio Network. Original music, editing, and production of this podcast is done by the talented Mathieu Leroux. Find my podcast on all podcast platforms, including SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and now newly on YouTube. Talk to you soon.